This is the Picard podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 9, Vox.
All Borg undergo genetic alterations so that their bodies can communicate with their cybernetic components. As it turns out, yours were just a little more extensive than we thought. New genetic code was actually written and stored inside you, something we were never able to detect 35 years ago.
So the anomaly Dr. Soong discovered during the captain's transition into synthetic form was in fact dormant biological Borg adaptations. They never truly let you go.
Welcome back, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers, to the Picard podcast on TV Podcast Industries. This week we are talking about Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 9, Vox. Yes, I am one of your hosts, John.
I'm one of your other hosts, Derek.
And rounding out this trio of Borg-tastic, we called it way too early, Borg-tastic themed Star Trek fans, I'm Chris.
Excellent. Penultimate episode, guys.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Can't forget the penultimate.
Really excited, although it seems like Geordie on our intro has taken my medium point, my omega point.
Oh, has he?
Yes.
Okay.
So I shall just defer to Geordie and Data having their conversation for that one.
Yeah, it's just, my point is, watch the beginning of our podcast.
It's just setting it up for you. Setting it up. You can knock the Skittles down, John, I guess.
I will indeed.
There you go. Good stuff.
I shall make a hash of it, in fact.
A big episode this week. The penultimate episode of Star Trek Picard. Also been a big week for Star Wars. We finished our Bad Batch podcast a couple of weeks ago, and Star Wars Celebration happened in the UK this week. So we put out a quick podcast, or at least I did, about the announcements that happened at Star Wars Celebration in the UK. But I just was joking with the lads just before we started recording that I went through everything that happened except the announcement of 3 massive movies coming in the Star Wars universe that we're all really excited about. But I think in my head I was going TV Podcast Industries must cover the TV stuff. But yes, loads of great announcements there over in the other universe.
Yes, including the announcement of Season 3 of The Bad Batch, which we will be covering. So yes,
absolutely.
We will be coming back to the Star Wars Galaxy for Bad Batch Season 3, as well as Ahsoka in August.
That's right.
Third and final season of the Bad Batch.
That's right.
Sad to see you go, but it's going to be fine. It's going to be good. We'll end on a high.
Well, and I'm guessing all linking into the Dave Filoni sort of smorgasbord that will culminate with the movie that was announced as well.
Yeah.
But I think enough of the wars.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the Treks.
Yeah, I was going to go for away from the galaxy, far, far away, back to the Sol system, because we're very close to home in this episode as well, aren't we?
That is much cleverer.
Hey, sometimes I got it.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes.
Thanks, guys.
But let us get into our spoiler-filled discussion, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. Quickly, before we do, remember you can head on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can join and subscribe on any Federation or Borginian supporting podcast player of your choice. Of course, you can send your emails to feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com for all your theories, thoughts, comments, and anything else on each and every episode of Star Trek Picard. And of course, we will be coming to you at the end of our discussion with the 9th question in our Picard final 10 forward pub quiz, which will be available later.
Yeah, all you need to do is just gather together all 10 answers to the pub quiz questions that we're giving out each episode and email them to us at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com to begin with your chance of getting your hands on some Star Trek Picard goodies. And I think we can confirm, I think we've got this right, we're crossing everything, that we will be covering the finale of Star Trek Picard before we go away on holidays.
Touch wood.
Yeah, we've aligned everything. We hope we'll be able to give that 10th question in next week's episode. So
yes, we have assimilated ourselves into a podcast network that will broadcast and assimilate our fellow Trekkies and Trekkers.
Okay, that doesn't sound threatening at all, John.
Just a normal day in the office,
Exactly,
really.
exactly. But let us get into the episode details for episode 9 of Vox. Derek, fire away. Or dare I say it, engage.
Engage, John. Wow. Almost missed it there. Yes, the show, of course, is created by Akiva Goldsman, Michael Chabon, Christian Bale, and Alex Kurtzman. This episode was written by Sean Tretta and Kylie Rossiter. Sean's also a co-writer on 2 episodes of this season, and Kylie has been a staff writer and story editor since the start of season 2 of Picard, but this is her first co-writer credit.
Congrats.
Yeah, good
Always
stuff.
good to get your name on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And considering, this show is all about family, it's great. This whole team have been working together since the start of season 2.
It's essentially Fast and the Furious.
Much better than that, yeah.
It's Fast and the Furious in space.
Yes.
Pretty sure they did that too already.
I think they
It's
tried it.
warp fast, warp furious
There you
in
go,
space.
okay.
Nice. Nice. I like it. And speaking of which, the executive producer on the series, Terry Matalas, has taken on directing duties for this episode. So he has directed episode 9 and will direct episode 10, the finale as well.
Very good, very good.
Mm-hmm. So, John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with their synopsis for Star Trek Picard, season 3, episode 9, Vox?
Sure. Deanna Troi realizes as she helps him navigate his thoughts that Jack Crusher is connected to the Borg, the source of all the voices he hears. Reporting to Picard what she has discovered, Picard tries to contain Jack to the USS Titan, given the danger he represents to Starfleet and the Federation. But Jack takes control of the security detail assigned to him and takes off to deal with the Borg Queen, who captures him to fulfill his destiny, as his resistance is futile and he is assimilated by the Borg Queen. With Jack gone, Picard's only option is to warn Starfleet as they amass in the Sol system to begin the Frontier Day celebrations. As the Titan races to Starfleet orbiting above Earth, Data, Geordi, and Beverly finally discover why the rogue changelings stole Picard's corpse. They were working with the Borg. The changelings copied Picard's Borg-altered DNA and added it to the transporter's architecture to implant the alterations in all users and to begin assimilation to those whose parietal lobes are still developing. Picard informs Admiral Shelby, leading the Frontier Day anniversary aboard the new USS Enterprise F of these developments, but it is too late. The Borg Queen triggers Jack Crusher, who transmits the Queen's signal to the entire fleet, beginning the assimilation of everyone under 25, including Geordi's daughters, though 7 of 9 remains immune to the assimilation signal. The Borg begin to take control of Starfleet ships. On board the Titan, the assimilated Borg start to kill the unassimilated at the orders of the Borg Queen. As the Wrinkles make their way to the lower decks to escape aboard a shuttle, Captain Shaw sacrifices himself to defend the Titan from the Borg and hands over command to Seven, who remains behind with Raffi. Geordi leads the crew via shuttlecraft to the Starfleet Museum, where he reveals that he secretly rebuilt the Enterprise D after its crash landing, and is now the only operable starship without Borg-designed swarm enhancements applied to the fleet by Starfleet. The Enterprise's old crew bring the Enterprise D back into service, and with minimal firepower and shields, head back to Earth to save the Federation from the Borg.
Woo! Go Enterprise D!
Well, it's not all of it, but it's close enough. They did, due to the Prime Directive, manage to fish out part of it.
It was gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it.
Yeah. I'm sure we will be talking about the Enterprise D later on in
That's
our
my
points.
big point.
But it is a beautiful ship. It's great to see it in fully rendered 4K 3D modelling for this episode. I don't know what those words mean. I just know it looks gorgeous.
Yeah, definitely.
Indeed.
But, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers, we will get into our moments of the show. But let us kick off with our small moment about the episode.
Make it so, number one.
Chris, engage.
Excellent stuff. Okay, I'm going to take a very small one, just a nice little kind of line from the piece, which was, again, talking about Wesley Crusher, one of the characters I still connect with a lot, and we got to see last season. But it's Beverly, who kind of basically was talking about how she let Wesley fly, and he yet still disappeared. He left her. And she held Jack so close, but he still is leaving her, and neither of them are safe. And it's an interesting thing, because she's had 2 sons now, and both sons theoretically have had problems, and both sons have left the proverbial starship-based nest, but also have come under problems. Like, for example, pretty sure she thinks Wesley is just off, away, being a traveller.
Yeah.
And she knows she'll never see him again. And now Jack is a Borg and off away with the thing. Like, she's lost both of her sons due to letting one fly and letting one holding one too close. It's just it was just poignant for me, just in terms of that kind of dichotomy of her, the crushers, if you will. Yeah,
absolutely. And for her, taking the blame for what's happened to Jack because she's holding him too close to notice that there's anything wrong with him is kind of what she's saying there. I think we've seen Picard take a lot of the blame for what's happening here as well. But Beverly's a very intelligent doctor who's quite easy able to solve some of these problems when she puts her mind to it. But here she's saying with Jack, she never even thought that there could be a problem because she's holding him too close. I thought it was a really good moment. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, even with him leaving the Titan the way he does, he using his telepathy, his control of others, he's holding her back as she tries to prevent him from going. So, I mean, it's a fairly kind of brutal way to sort of manhandle your mother in a sense, So, I thought that was really significant, and it sort of brings about this lament of Beverly, as she confides with Jean Luc.
Absolutely.
I just also enjoyed the Wesley being a pilot on the Enterprise. It's just a nice nod back to him. She let him fly. She let him onto the bridge deck, and he flew for the Enterprise D, and it still cost him his remainder of his life in a good way, that he became the Traveller first.
He's off in space now. Yes. But
he's Star Trekking across the universe, if you will. But so that's my point. That's my little small kind of moment.
Excellent. Good one, Chris. Good one. Like that.
Thank you.
Excellent. Derek, what about yourself?
I have another Crusher moment, Jack Crusher this time. I just really enjoyed the moment when Picard is revealing what's happened, how Jack has gotten to this position, how Jean Luc is involved, and I love Jack analysing himself as to why. What could have been wrong with him in the past, that he's saying something that a lot of us may say, where I understood that there were problems with the world. I understood that not everybody thinks like me. There's wars out there. There's things that are broken. There's systems that are broken. And then at the realization that he potentially has Borg inside of him, he's going, who would have thought a little cybernetic authoritarianism was the answer that I was looking for? I really like that moment because it's a real throw in the face to Picard, and also challenging the ideals that he has, where he's trying to work out where he ends and the Borg piece of him begins. Is the reason why he thinks everything's broken, and if only people could see the world the same way as him, everything would be fine. Is that coming from the Borg and the implants that he has inside of himself, or is that really part of his personality? It's a great moment of questioning himself, and just delivered in a wonderful line. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I thought it was really good, that line, actually, because it kind of chimed to some extent with Jack's view of, the world, the galaxy, the universe. He mentions it about, fairness and equity. We saw it at the start where he's trying to get medical supplies, past a blockade and so on.
Yeah.
But, when the Borg have always kind of, for very different reasons, is that they've always had that superiority complex because in the Borg collective, there is inner peace and contentment and equality and fairness, primarily. There's no war, there's no factions. It's everyone is content within a certain point of view, you know? So I kind of like that it almost like chimed with those views that Jack holds, but in a different way for sure. Because whilst the Borg didn't have internal wars or civil wars, they would go to war with any other species at the drop of a hat in order to assimilate them. So, but they would always kind of broach that assimilation is good because you'll find peace. It will be equitable. You'll be part of the collective.
If we just take away your free will, and your connection to other people, then you can join the collective and everything will be fine. But yeah, that's a really good point as well, though, John, that it does chime with what we heard from right at the beginning with Jack, that he is willing to break any law that's in his way to do what he believes is morally correct and morally right. And if only other people believe the way he did, they would all believe that what he's doing is right. So that's quite an interesting little tie up of that arc of Jack. We were hoping last episode, we were kind of saying this episode better tell us more about Jack and who he is and what he's all about. It definitely delivered on that for me, right from the opening of what was behind the door all the way through the episode to discover who Jack is, going into this final episode, where we see whether he'll actually use who he is as in some way to defeat the Borg. But this moment here kind of solidified it for me. I really like that, the lines that are here. Good stuff. I think, John, you have your line from the episode, your small moment from the episode.
Yes, I've got kind of two Deanna Troi ones, actually. So I really like her lightness that she brings to these moments. It just had me chuckling as Picard, Shaw, 7 of 9 are escaping from the bridge of the Titan after they've been assimilated, and it opens up and all the others, Riker, Deanna, Worf, Geordi are all there pointing their phasers at them, and Deanna just says, I've never been so happy to see so many wrinkles, because I just thought it was a really nice line, because it's true. There's a lot of wrinkles there.
Absolutely.
And I just thought it was fun. I liked it. I think the other side of that, though, is that I just love, as you all know, I love Deanna Troi, but just how serious she was after helping unlock the secrets of Jack's brain to Picard and to Beverly, where they were seeing it as parents, and she says there are protocols. As of this moment, your son is dangerous, and she's really firm about it. She's like, you can't just ignore this. So I just love that kind of contrast of her here in this episode. So so that's my point. I think the other little connected bit here is I do like it when Jack Crusher is kind of saying to Picard, she was in my brain, what she did there, I'm not going to let another Betazoid come anywhere near me. She's Starfleet. That's not right. As though, she's done something really sort of horrendous, but simply because she wouldn't tell him. Yeah,
absolutely. And also, when you're not being told that someone's been inside your head to see all the secrets that's inside your head, you have no idea what they've really seen, I suppose. So, which is his moral point there, is that, she's able to read everything inside your mind. Surely there's a problem with that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I really like that too.
But that's my point. I think on to our medium moment.
Implement the Omega Directive immediately.
Good stuff. Derek, what's your medium moment?
I want to talk about the Borg. Massive reveal, obviously, at the beginning of the episode here, that the Borg is what the connection is for Jack. This is what's been going on his entire life, that they've been calling out to him. But I had to look into this, because the Borg formed such a central part of season 2 of Picard. They are the greatest foe of the Next Generation. So you can understand why you would tie in the cast of the Next Generation with the Borg. It's who you pick. It's who you pick on, right? When you're going to do it. But we ended season 2 with, and I hope everybody's watched season 2, or if you haven't watched it, you're not concerned about being spoiled about how it ends. But it ends with Dr. Jurati becoming the Borg Queen and traveling forward in time with her Borg collective. So I had to look into it as to, hold on a second, has that replaced the Borg collective that we have? So how can they be the antagonists in this season if in last season we had a compromise between them and the Borg were going to be working with Picard and working with Starfleet? That was how it kind of ended, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember.
That's what we thought. And if you remember back to our podcast about it, we were all wondering, what's the impact here? Would that replace the Borg? Would all the adventures and moments that we had within all of Star Trek with the Borg, would they all be replaced by Jurati going back with this collective? Well, turns out, even back at the time, it was said, after the episode had come out, people were asking this question constantly. And effectively, because of the time travel element here, with Jurati going back and forming part of the Borg, that they have come back as their own collective, as a separate group, and they are focused on exactly the mission that they said they were going to, but they are not the main Borg.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting and really good to kind of make sure it was clear in our heads, because, in other words, now I'm not expecting next week to have Dr. Jurati turn around when the camera pans to the front of the Borg Queen's face. We see Dr. Jurati.
Well, exactly.
There. Not expecting that now, because if you think back on the season, it was actually said quite clearly. And also a moment from earlier on this season, in episode 4, where Shaw has his speech to Picard about Wolf 359, the attack of the Borg. At the end of that speech, and we all missed it. I know we did, because we didn't even talk about it, but here's the last bit of his speech.
Do you know where your old man was on that day? He was on that Borg cube, setting the world on fire! Forget about all that weird shit of the Stargazer. The real Borg are still out there, and they have a name for you. Locutus of Borg. The only Borg so deadly, they gave him a goddamn name.
All right, that's enough.
No?
So quite clearly, Shaw calls out that the thing that happened, the weirdness that happened on the Stargazer in the past with Picard, is completely separate to the Borg we see in this universe. So that's really good. I like that we have that clarification. We had questioned, as I said last season, whether all the adventures that we had with the Borg hadn't happened. And I think the quote at the time from Terry Matalas about this was that they came back and avoided history. This group stayed out of the way of history. So that's a completely different Borg group.
Yeah, no, that's really good kind of clarification, because we didn't see the face of that Borg Queen, even though that Borg Queen in front of Jack didn't look quite as steampunky as Borgatti, then I was kind of thinking, oh, is it going to be Borgatti? You know, is it going to be Dr. Jurati and in her Borg form? You know, and so I'm glad it won't be. But she might also decide to sort of join history. Because part of that whole thing at the end of season 2 was that they would watch this fissure that was happening, and, you know, almost be like a lighthouse for danger.
Yeah.
So
watches on the wall.
Yeah,
exactly.
Who knows?
Yeah, so they may come back. We may see Borgatti coming back in the next episode, but they are completely separate to the other Borg. But one other thing we should mention as well, we did mention this when we were doing our Last of Us podcast, that Annie Wershing, the actress who played the Borg Queen, did unfortunately pass away earlier on this year. She passed away in January of this year, so we know she wasn't returning to Picard for this role. In this episode, it's actually Alice Krieg who voices the Borg Queen, and she's the one that had originally voiced the Borg Queen in Star Trek First Contact. So they got her back in here to do the voice of the Borg Queen. So I can kind of understand why we didn't see her face. I'm not sure whether that was just for dramatic tension or it was just out of respect of the actress Anna Wershing who'd played the role many times in the past. So or maybe it'll be a massive reveal next week that it's somebody else that we might know within the universe who's now the Borg Queen. So
who knows?
Yeah. We don't know until we see the finale.
Oh my god! Can you imagine? It's going to be. Do you imagine it's the third Borg Queen? Then actually, it would be it would be a second Borg Queen that we are aware of. So this would be an actual third Borg Queen. Can you imagine? And it's going to end up being someone like who we know from the Next Generation cast or something a bit weird.
Yeah,
that would be
interesting, won't it? Because it was, as Jack approached the Borg ship, I actually thought it looked more like a series of almost like a city floating in the nebula.
Didn't it?
Yeah.
It didn't look like just a single cube. Because we saw like the cube in the door, and then this looked like almost like a floating city because you looked like it had other cubes attached.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I was like, huh. And it was in literally the nebula, and I'm like, it wasn't that hard to find. It's like, anyway.
Interestingly, it is the top of the Borg cube, and I watched it again. It's kind of the bottom of the Borg cube is kind of covered by that cloud. I will say that Terry Metalis has said that's not a nebula. You'll find out next week what that place they're in is, but it's not a nebula.
So the Borg are farting.
Could be.
They are releasing a lot of gas.
But there you go. That was my point for this moment. Is something I needed clarification on. Went out and had a look, and I know we got a bunch of feedback from a number of fellow Trekkies and Trekkers who had watched season 2 and were all questioning where is Jurati and why are these Borg here now villainous in this season? Why are they trying to take over Starfleet? It could absolutely be that Jurati turns around at the end of next episode and there's a whole exposition monologue from her as to why she's turned back to being the old Borg in next episode. That could be it. But as of right now, at least we have clarification on what's happened and what's different between those two groups of Borg.
Yeah.
What about yourself, John? What's your Omega directive, your medium moment for the episode?
Mine's the whole, Irumodic syndrome, the genetic alterations, this plan of the Borg, effectively the puppet masters of the changelings here. I know there could be a lot of thoughts about how the members of the Titan got enlightened very, very quickly, all seemingly knowing bits of it, in terms of the exposition of what happens. But, for me, I kind of loved it. It's been fed throughout the course of the season. And it plays into classic, Star Trek Next Generation episodes. So I didn't see anything particularly unusual about it. Thought on it quite fondly in terms of how the episodes happened, back in the 90s.
Everybody fills in a little piece of the jigsaw.
Exactly. There are moments where there are pieces, sort of the jigsaw. But I mean, it does start early in the episode with Beverly, talking about this organic technology, to Jean Luc Picard soon after Troy, comes to inform them that Jack has been hearing the Borg. Effectively has these connections, and that it's been passed through Jean-Luc as Locutus to Jack, and I like that, that there's that conversation where effectively the Irumodic syndrome was a misdiagnosis, effectively, but that this genetic code used and implanted into Picard's own genetic sequence is effectively what killed him. Yeah. It needed that generational skip for it to become activated in a safer way, I guess. Yeah. But it wasn't the Irumodic syndrome that kills Picard. It's this altering of his DNA. And it was manifesting itself, in the frontal cortex of the brain. So I liked how all this, progressed through the episode. And, as we see then that this is the plan of the Borg through, the changelings. That's why Vadik, wanted and stole the body of Jean-Luc from the Daystrom station, so that they could extract this modified DNA in order to weaponize that genetic code. Through, we find later, the transporter system. And it's interesting because the last episode with Vadik in, she is very adamant that she won't use the transporter. They come by shuttle.
Yep.
And we were thinking that was because it would show the changeling.
Yep.
They would kind of, deform into the blob. But it is more than likely is because they've been implanting this corrupted DNA, this altered DNA sequence into the sequence architecture of the transporter system, which retains, primary DNA signals or coding so that it can be a faster transporting system, I guess. Then I was starting to think, is that why Rolaren wouldn't come aboard on via transporter? That she knew this information because, and then that makes more sense because when I first watched it, I was like going, well, why is Worf suddenly like chirping up with the explanations? I just kind of wasn't really thinking, and then of course because he's got the array of intelligence and data that Rolaren and themselves had been collecting. So they probably knew about this because even Worf and Raffi, that there was something wrong with the transporter, at least. They didn't know the exact details. This was, really kind of teased out through Beverly, Geordi, and Data. So I kind of like the whole explanation. I wish we had seen a bit of the changelings in this episode, even if it was them falling foul of the Borg, almost like a double cross. In the sense that, because some of them would have used transporters, and this coding seemed to suggest that because it was being passed through the transporter, that anyone that used it, so this was how I was reading, that any species within the Federation that was using Starfleet transporters, and I guess Federation transporters back on Earth and at other locations would have this replicated in a sense or inserted into their alteration. I mean, they effectively are saying they're already assimilated.
Yes.
And the main thing then to weaponize this DNA, this modified DNA coding, is because Jack's importance is as a transmitter of this signal generated in the nebula, but not a nebula, by the Borg Queen.
Yeah.
So, I kind of like the explanation, even though it all kind of dropped very quickly and in this episode. But I liked how it played out. I thought it was real sort of, sinister, evil, and you could see why the changelings would do this. In terms of revenge for what happened in the Dominion War. I thought it had like that gravitas, and involving the Borg, as you say, being the next generation's most lethal adversary. I just thought it was really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, isn't it, that some of the theories that we'd heard throughout the season from our wonderful listeners, as well, some of those theories about the Dominion creating a virus that could spread through all of the Federation to take them down like they did. It's kind of that. There's a little touch of it, that it is almost like they've created a virus from Locutus to put it in there. But also, the reason why it all sits quite well in this episode is the key that none of the rest of the crew had to work out their theories. The key that none of them had was that DNA from Picard. So once that's dropped in to them all, when they work out that this is what they're using, that allows them to kind of put all of their theories together. And as you say, it works really well as a next generation moment where every member of the crew that all have their own specialties are adding to the story, adding to the context of what's happening to work out what the real plan of the Borg is here. So I loved how it was delivered, because it's something that would have been done very often in the past.
Well, it's like the techniques to change the genetic code of mosquitoes so that you don't necessarily have to apply insecticides, but that they won't be able to reproduce effectively.
Right.
So yeah, I guess, it's the weaponizing of DNA in that way towards the Federation. So I kind of like that. As I say, I want to see some of our blobby friends, to be honest. Just, whether it was them, feeling betrayed because they were being assimilated as well, or even seeing the reaction of it taking place. I mean, I know Vadik is dead, but there must still be a whole rake of changelings throughout the Starfleet.
Yes, absolutely. And remember, they're all in positions of power. They may not be aboard the ships that were just assimilated just there, so we do have a final episode. I presume we're going to have a couple of reveals of a couple of members of senior leadership that we don't know who are changelings. So we do still have that in the next episode. But this episode was all about the Borg reveal. Yeah.
And again, most of the Borg all have to be under 25.
Yeah, that's true.
So the changelings are the more senior. They're the ones that have taken the places of the admirals, the Caprins, etc.
Yeah.
And the worker bees, the drones, are all the 25-year-old and younger people who've gone through a transporter.
Yeah.
And have been activated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So now we know why they gave the age of 23 to Jack Crusher, even though the actor is significantly older. Because he had to be under 25, right? Yeah. I wonder, did they know about that story point when they cast him?
You are 24 and 6 months.
Exactly.
Well,
if they had called it out directly.
Your birthday is in 3 months' time. That'll cover us for the storyline, right?
Although, of course, we're talking... I kind of got the impression from Beverly that related to human development, not, whereas the development of changelings or Vulcans or other species and their biology, it may be different, slightly different.
Yeah,
but
true.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to get into that, but that's what I assumed, is it might not be equal across all the different species.
It may not. It's about the frontal lobe and when it develops, right? That was that's what she said. Yeah.
If they even have a frontal lobe.
I unfortunately don't have the anatomy book for the Vulcans or for any of the other species
neither.
outside of humans, and I'll just have to take Beverly Crusher's insight for that.
Yes.
But I did love how Seven worked it out as well when they're in the turbo lift as the change is happening, as everybody's being assimilated, and Seven looks around her and goes, "I'm guessing by the grey hair this only affects younger people," as she sees that everybody around her is significantly older than the ones that turned. Great moment from Seven. But this is this moment when we have all of the Next Generation cast working together to work it out, or the Next Generation crew, sorry, not cast, crew, working it all out together. It was really good. I liked it.
Absolutely.
How about yourself, Chris? What's your medium moment for the episode?
Mine's a bit of a smaller one. It is the Frontier Day.
Mm-hmm.
It is fireworks in space.
Yes.
Which I was like,
does that work?
Sure, it is. This is sci-fi. I will suspend belief. I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Let's go with it. Starships, I can understand they are full of oxygen.
Mm.
So when they explode, there is some explosion and some flames and stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, get it. Again, not fully sciencey, but fine. Mm-hmm. But the fireworks, I was like,
Is that how that works? Would they look that way in space?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That was literally, and they had the kind of literally, as you would expect, a firework, kind of a bang, and then like the trails. Yeah. I was like,
it's like
cool.
Is it Earth's gravity is pulling them down in that way because they're close enough in Earth's system? Is that what it is?
It was just such a strange one, but
it was a little. I just brushed it aside to think maybe it's nano drones being programmed to look like fireworks.
Exactly.
And then the light goes out and then they all kind of hive back to the central point. So it's also recycling.
Yeah. Or maybe they're holographic.
Or holographic.
We have seen them before in another movie that we've covered on this here podcast. Can you guys remember when we saw fireworks in a movie that we covered in this podcast?
Oh, God.
In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, we saw fireworks at the end of that movie.
Yes, I remember now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, from the Ravagers. The Ravagers?
That was it, yes.
I'm trying to remember things about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, but that's the last time we saw fireworks in space. So there is a precedent for it. So I'm not going to punish Picard too much for having it there. And they could easily just go, they were holographic, just for the look. Everybody likes fireworks, so we still get them in space.
Yeah. But it was cool. Again, seeing Frontier Day in what we had assumed, the way it was going to be, the way it was just shown. I actually, the pomp and circumstance that they have built up about Frontier Day being what it was exactly how I thought it was going to be, and that's what it was. It was like almost like a military parade, if you will. And again, kind of having seen some of those before, you're like, yeah, okay, that's what it is.
Yeah. And the massive reveal, of course, of why they're getting all of the ships together, because now they can effectively push a button and it turns into Mega Fleet. But
go Mega Fleet.
Exactly. And, of course, another major character coming back here from the Next Generation. Now Admiral Shelby.
Yes.
Really cool to see, this character back, in here. If you don't remember, because it's been a very long time, of course, Shelby was supposed to be Riker's replacement on the Next Generation crew when Riker was going to go off. It happened, unfortunately for Riker, at the same time as Picard being taken off to be Locutus of Borg. So that was her appearance in the show, was the 2 episodes around Locutus of Borg. So her being on board as a member of the crew, potentially the new number 1, fighting against Riker, who wanted to save his captain and best friend, was a really antagonistic relationship. She was excellent in that role. And now we're seeing her in charge as an admiral of Starfleet, a working admiral, not like Picard, retired admiral, a working admiral, effectively bringing a Borg-like technology into Starfleet, allowing them to join all their ships together, just like a Borg collective. So that's what Picard's comment is. Look at her, Shelby there, of all people, bringing such Borg-like technology into Starfleet. So, loved those little moments.
That's a nice one. Again, if you're giving an end to the Next Generation, people who have been following this up to for years, decades.
Yeah.
People have been following these characters. So bringing a very small nostalgia Easter egg for some of the real Trekkies is beautiful.
Absolutely.
Because again, it's still played as just a pompous admiral.
Yeah.
Just for those who don't know, like myself. I will honestly say, didn't cop that at all. But again, for you guys, you're like, yeah, that's cool. I'm really happy with that.
And it's interesting because I thought she was going to become a changeling.
So that's what I thought when she was like. I was expecting the kind of the wibbly wobbly jelly type to splatter down, and that was type of thing. And you're like, oh my god.
Yeah, but unfortunately, she gets a much worse.
She gets shot twice.
Yeah, she gets shot twice by her own crew, effectively, who've been
assimilated,
become members of the collective. Yeah. But it is really good. The minute I saw Admiral Shelby back here, I recognised the actress straight away. Elizabeth Dennehy plays the role. You guys might recognise her. You guys are old enough. She is the daughter of Brian Dennehy.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
Big actor back in the 80s and 90s. So the minute I saw her, I could recognize exactly who it was. And I was kind of going, oh, wow, they brought a real Easter egg here from the big Borg episodes of Next Generation. So very cool to see her on board here. An unfortunate demise, at the hands of her own crew. But I thought it was really good. It's not even an Easter egg. We've said before that when they bring back characters from the past, they're giving some meat to their reasons for being here. And once again, did that with Shelby here for me.
Yeah, no, it was great to see her. It was really cool to have her back, for sure. Yeah. And it was to Picard's, how ironic that she would introduce a Borg-like system into Starfleet. That's when I thought, oh, we're going to see
that she's
a changeling.
Yeah.
But then she doesn't. And gets killed instead by her own assimilated crew. So yeah, alas, Admiral Shelby, will she or won't she be fired off into outer space under
alas, he will be missed.
Yes, like in naval traditional or star fleet tradition.
Well, since the rest of her crew are now Borg, it's unlikely they're going to be standing on ceremony for her.
I
her
would
passing,
think
unfortunately.
not. But shall we get into our big moments for the episode?
We must face the ramifications of the Prime Directive.
So, Derek, what's your big moment?
We kind of talk a little bit about this. This episode is all about the Borg and all about who Jack is. You know, I've mentioned that in probably each of my points as well. So, already. But my big moment from the episode is, Jack going off to face his fate, at the end here. You know, the idea that he was going to be trapped there on the Titan after learning the secret about what happened, who he is, what's inside him. He uses all of the powers that we've seen him use all season, this controlling the other security officers to get him away from Picard. He blocks off Beverly, gets himself on a ship, and then uses that connection to the voice that he's been hearing calling him home. He uses that connection to find where the Borg are, and goes through that transwarp conduit to
I think so. Yeah,
lead to the Borg. And then we see that wonderful moment I always love when members of Starfleet are walking around inside a Borg cube. I always love those moments. So it's always really creepy and scary as a character is walking through. You don't know whether you're going to see Borg drones coming out. You don't know what's going to happen aboard it, but he's here to see the Queen and she's called him forth. So we don't see anybody coming to attack him or worrying about him being on board. But he confronts her, and what we heard earlier on from Jack is he wanted to show who he truly was by killing her. He said he would get into her confidences, and as soon as she drops her guard, he'll take her out.
Yeah.
But we see him pointing the weapon at the Borg Queen and unable to shoot. He drops the weapon and screams that effectively he can't do anything about this. He's not willing to take her out, and effectively hands himself over to be assimilated. There's no surprise or reaction as the tendrils come in and jab into the back of Jack to make him assimilated. And as you said, John, that then translates and transfers this message from the Borg to the entire fleet. He is now the transmitter from the Borg to activate all of these troops now that they've been assimilated.
Well, that's it. A bit like a massive speaker at a massive music event. Jack gets plugged in to transmit effectively here, and probably the Borg Queen does whack it up to 11 for good measure.
I think so.
Just to make sure. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I guess I was expecting more of a fight in that moment, but it's understandable because he's in her domain, effectively. There is a genetic code there already active within. And, you know, whatever she is transmitting, it's like from season 2 with Dr. Jurati slowly transforming into the new Borg Queen. The connections that they have with one another is hugely intense, hugely powerful. So you know, I did really like it. I thought, you know, anyone's eyes rolling black, whether it's in you know, Star Trek with the Borg Queen or aboard the assimilated Starfleet, or whether it's the supernatural demons, are always good to see
on the show Supernatural.
Yes, on the show Supernatural. So
or just supernatural demons.
Exactly.
You know, just you're walking down the street and you see someone's eyes roll black. You're like, yeah, that's pretty cool.
That was cool. I'm running now.
So I really like this. I think the other side of it is, you know, I'd love to have known what ran through his head in that moment, because I really enjoyed. You know, I thought it was pretty harsh when Picard says, you know, that Starfleet protocols dictate that, you know, we must consider the interests of everyone else, not effectively not you, which actually is also very Borg-like. And he goes, what about the protocols of a father, or were you never issued those? I really liked his retort. And of course, you know, he's going off thinking he's the bee's knees, and that he'll be able to kind of sort of take this entity of the Borg Queen on, and suddenly finds, you know, the Queen of the nest will always deal with the workers. Because I actually was thinking, because of the genetic coding, I was like, oh, is this like a king? You know, I thought it was like a specialness about it, or more so for him, so that he would almost be kind of like the right-hand man of the Borg Queen.
Well, yeah.
So it's sort of elevated above, in a sense, the worker Borg.
Absolutely. Exactly like Locutus was.
Yeah, exactly.
That clip that I played from Shaw earlier on also calls that out. He's the only Borg that got their own name within the collective, still remained a member of the collective. We've had Hugh, who chose his own name after he broke away from the collective, but Locutus was the only one given it because of its importance to the collective. And now, as Jack arrives, we hear the Borg Queen saying, here are some of the names that I thought up to give you, you know, that you could be the regeneration of us. You could be the rebirth of the Borg. These are some of the names, but no, you're not Locutus. You are Vox. You are the voice of the Borg now. So he has given his own name because of his importance. They could not have carried out this plan and taken over Starfleet and activated all of these members that have used the transporters without the transmitter that is Vox, that is this member of the Borg now.
So almost on a similar level to Locutus. Then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
But effectively a glorified speaker.
Well, yeah. Yes.
I mean, in a good way, you know,
in
like
a good way.
The voice
can connect to it's the transmitter for the master stroke plan, the final Deus Ex Machina, if you will.
Is it Gabriel who is the voice of God?
It's the Metatron.
The Metatron, that's it.
As we all learned in the Kevin Smith movie
from Transformers.
That's Megatron.
Oh, yeah, that one.
No, the Kevin Smith movie, which called it out, which was Dogma, and they called out in that once it's in a movie, then you'll know it forever. Yes. But effectively, the point of it is the transmitter is massively important. The voice of the Borg is massively important because if there was no voice, if there was nobody transmitting it, nobody else could hear it, right? So it would just be the Queen waiting to encounter beings to bring them aboard and assimilate them. So without this piece of the puzzle that is dropping into place here, they couldn't have carried out this massive plan. So that's of course why the last 7 episodes or 8 episodes of the show were people trying to chase down Jack to bring him to Borg, right? To the Borg.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But that was my big moment. I know there's a couple other big moments from the episode, of course, to talk about. Who wants to go next? Who wants to talk about their big moment next? Chris, do you want to take yours?
Sure, I'll take mine. And I want to spend some time for discussion at the end in terms of everything around this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So mine is the death of Shaw and the death of Legacy.
Mm-hmm. Massive moments.
Before we get into the death of Shaw, fans have, and we've talked about it before in our recent other podcasts, fans have been clamoring and kind of campaigning for the next season or the next series within the Star Trek universe being something around Legacy, around Shaw and Seven and these new characters who have been introduced aboard the Titan. The Titans of Star Trek, if you will. I don't think this is ever going to happen. I think and they knew this and they're very happy with kind of stringing people forward, not stringing them along, but very much playing into the social media requests going, because all the stars have gone, yes, if they'd asked me, I'll come back. Like that's how and that's very true.
Absolutely. They're not going to say, I die in episode 8. That's not happening. That would kind of spoil the show, wouldn't it?
Yeah, they could, They could. I think it's an interesting take in that typically I've yet to see Star Trek kill off many, 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 many characters.
Okay.
Like, if you think about going through, I was trying to run through in my head, like, you've got Tasha Yar. Mm-hmm. You've got
Picard.
Characters who are significant in seasons.
Yeah.
They haven't they haven't I want to say main characters because obviously within Next Generation our main characters are usually but like Jurati wasn't killed. Soji wasn't killed. Even Rios wasn't killed. Like they've taken them off the board.
Yeah.
But to kill Shaw outright when they have kind of, like, they've given Seven the control and things like that. But there's very few within the Star Trek universe. They really kind of go, hey, you've grown attached to this character. Because let's be honest, within this season, he is a main character.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, that's an interesting thing to just kind of, again,
I mean, Kirk as well, but in a movie, as well as Spock, who then came back. So, I mean, that is actually...
Spock came back, see,
exactly.
that's the thing. I was like...
As did Picard.
And Data.
And Data. So, maybe Shaw, could come back.
There's one more body out there for the columns.
And like, it's interesting, and I know, Todd Stashwick has been fantastic in this role. He's been really, really good, and I know he's connected with the audience. I'm sure they knew what they had. When you bring someone like Todd Stashwick into the show, you know what you have. You know you've got a character that's going to connect with the audience. I don't think they probably thought that the call for, we need a spin-off show because Picard is going so well, we must have a spin-off show. I don't think they expected by episode 3 that the hashtag Star Trek Legacy was going to be out there, that people were liking Shaw 7's dynamic, and we're hoping to learn more about the bridge crew here, and we're expecting that we're going to see USS Titan carries on and new adventures coming next year, So I don't think they were expecting that. And you're right, it's not just Shaw that we lose here. It's also all of the legacy characters, and what was meant by that hashtag was the younger generation, everybody under 25. And this plan of the Borg that's happened here is everybody under 25 is being assimilated. So everybody that we've met, all the new characters we've met this season, have all been assimilated. The only ones left are our actual legacy next generation characters, in fact. So those people are all still there. Everybody else we've lost here. So it is a big move, but I know they didn't have a plan for a spin-off from this show. That was never the intention.
Because I think they might now, depending on who survives, they may do it.
But does that, I have to know this, and I'd love to get our feedback from our wonderful fellow listeners and fellow trekkers here. Does that really disappoint people now? If you start a show and people are enjoying the characters and those characters die, does that disappoint you, or does that excite you like it does for me when someone dies in a show that I wasn't expecting to die? That really excites me. That means they're taking risks and telling stories and not worrying about the future, only worrying about telling a great story right now and a great season right now. That's what this did for me in this episode. It's horrible that the character of Shaw died. I was introduced to him this season, really enjoyed the character. It's horrible that he died, but it's a great moment. It's a really good moment for the story.
Absolutely.
So, I like steaks. This is
me too, Chris. Medium rare, yeah.
Yes. With a good béarnaise sauce, some peppercorn. Anyway, no, I enjoy steaks in our shows. We've talked about it before. If we don't feel like there is an actual chance you're going to lose people in these, it's like The Flash. The Flash on CW lost a lot of meaning for me because people kept dying and they kept coming back. Yeah. And you're like, well, I don't believe they're dead now and there's no stakes. So, like, anyone who dies is going to be revived quite quickly. Yeah. So, I don't. Like, the shock of seeing Shaw dead, I was like, that's interesting. You playing with my emotions in that way. So, I really enjoy that. It hasn't taken it away. Yeah. If anything, it's just, I've actually doubled down and I'm like, yeah, if they find a way to bring him back or bring back this crew, not him, and maybe it's for his legacy that they're doing this, and Seven's the captain and all these other guys and Rafi's there. Again, they brought in and they created some really good characters. Like we had Rios for 2 seasons and we loved him. Like as a character, and especially even his holograms. So you imagine a Shaw as a hologram?
Absolutely.
Great.
That's it. I mean, because Geordie's 2 daughters are changed. Yes. So is Mura and most of the crew on the bridge. Yeah. So I'm sure that potentially is reversible. What's happened to some extent. You never know.
That's what they're aiming for.
It's science fiction, so, could easily happen. So yeah, I mean, having Shaw there as a hologram or something, but I mean, I think it doesn't disappoint. I think I'm totally with you. You know, you need stakes within a show. I think, you know, this had meaning because of Shaw throughout this series.
Exactly.
You know, even where he says, it's not my ship anymore, it's yours. You have the Khan 7 of 9, because he was so distrustful of her at the beginning. I mean, this, you know, speaking of naval traditions, this is very, you know, the killed in action. It's very much almost a bit like, I thought we were going to, you know, like, with Nelson, like Kiss Me Hardy or something like that. You know, it's the death throes of being killed in action of the captain and his first officer.
Right.
You know, it screams, Battle of Trafalgar vibes in a sense. And so I kind of really, I thought it was really sort of meaningful because of how he interacted with Seven.
It was really poignant. But remember, he was dead naming her earlier on in the season. He was calling her Hanson, refused to call her
Absolutely.
Seven, and is now not only calling her by her right name, he's also handing over the con to her. He's also saying, "This is now your ship when you get it back from the Borg."
Absolutely.
But
So I have no qualms with that at all. There's no enjoyment lost. It is a meaningful sentence because really got to enjoy this character of Captain Shaw. And yes, of course, I would have loved if there was some spin-off from Picard that would have had him in. Absolutely. But I think ultimately this was a next generation spin-off.
Exactly.
And it wasn't about creating the next Star Trek, and not everything will be done with that in mind, whatever it may be.
Exactly.
So yeah, I thought this was a really good moment, his death. I thought it really meant something. I loved the interaction there with 7 of 9.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I agree. So that's the end of mine. It's a shame to see Shaw go, but I'm happy to watch him leave.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the old saying. But John, what is your final big moment?
That means something different than you've described it as, Chris. But anyway,
it's a good segue. I'm going to stick with this segue.
Okay.
John, what's your main point?
It is the Enterprise D returns, and of course the Enterprise F bats its eyelids and shows a bit of warp core. Yeah, I love this. I love the reference here with Enterprise D, just having that ship coming out of the Starfleet Museum.
You've done something that I didn't expect you to do. You've made me more interested about what the hell you're talking about with Enterprise F.
So we see
its eyelids.
We see the older Enterprise D.
Yes.
We see the new Enterprise F coming out of the space station for Frontier Day.
Yes, we do.
Which was cool. I loved seeing that.
Commando by Shelby,
I loved even more seeing the Enterprise D return. And I just thought it was so cool. I mean, it still looks cool.
Yeah.
It's so sleek. And I mean, actually, obviously Starfleet has got chunkier as the years have passed, because, you know, it's really sleek and kind of sensual. It's curvy and just frankly sexy. I love the ship. The Enterprise D. You know, I guess it's a nostalgia thing from back in the 90s, but I just thought it looked really cool. Just even the blue of the lights and the red.
Yeah.
It's just so good. I didn't really think I'd get so worked up about seeing the starship coming back on. So I really enjoyed it. I'm half expecting it to disintegrate as it flies at warp to sort of capture and to intercept the Borgs, but nonetheless, I absolutely loved it, and I love the fact that we got on board to see inside. You know, it's interesting. It looked really small in comparison to the Titan. It's because they've kind of they've got, it's almost like storage space. I don't know what it used to be, but it looks like storage space either side. It feels much narrower and smaller, but I loved seeing, cause that curvy design with the big console behind the captain's chair, just really good. I love that we got the voice of Majel Barrett Roddenberry, as the computer on the Enterprise D coming in, that Jean Luc will accept that field demotion as the voice says, Captain Picard, we get engaged. I mean, this was really fantastic for me. I loved seeing it.
I presume that part of the reason why Picard makes the joke about the field demotion is because it is Majel Barrett Roddenberry's voice, who's passed quite a long time ago now, so they wouldn't have ever recorded any dialogue with her saying Admiral Picard. So they turned it into that joke there. There's just some great moments on there. It's, it's interesting that you mentioned about the ship being smaller and Riker's going, is it smaller? But it's just because it's a different type of ship, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
And the joke with Picard as well, where he's saying, it's only now that I realize being aboard here with all of you around me, that I really prefer the carpet. So yes, a very different ship to the sleek ships. But did you see the little tease that they did here? Lots of criticism of new Star Trek for how dark the ships are and the lighting is on all of the ships. And I thought anyway that they were teasing us as they turned on the lights on the Enterprise. It takes quite a while for it to come on. The lighting is looking very similar to what the Titan has looked like all season this season. And then eventually we get the full studio lighting like we used to see back in the Next Generation. So I know they're teasing us because they know how dark Star Trek has become over the years. So I'm glad that they turned on the full lights so we can see that full replica of the bridge.
But I love the last shot of this. Enterprise D just looks so pretty as it turns out of the Starfleet Museum and jumps to warp. Yep. Like, it was just really cool. Just the angles. But yeah, as I say, the starships have gotten chunkier. I mean, Enterprise F, it's a chunkmeister there. Other interesting reference here is that the first Enterprise, the NX-01, Captain Archer's ship, was also referenced.
It was. Yes, the first ship, of course, featured in Enterprise, captained by Captain Archer 250 years beforehand. That's what they're memorializing here. So,
I think it was referenced by Admiral Shelby.
Yeah, in her big speech about.
Oh, I thought she was talking about Cochrane.
No, she's speaking
at
the NX.
During First Contact when they did that ship.
She talks about the first Warp 5 capable ship.
Warp 5. Okay, I missed the 5. I heard the first Warp, and I thought it was a callback to literally First Contact where they did that. It turned out it was the Next Generation crew with Cochrane.
Yeah, I can see why the confusion come in, but that was the old day that used to be celebrated by the Federation. That used to be First Contact Day. We heard that on in the first season of Picard. This is Frontier Day, so this is when they broke into the next frontier. So, which was the subject of Enterprise, the series. So, so it's kind of cool that they're able to reference all of these Enterprises, and we've already, of course, seen James T. Kirk's Enterprise this season as well. So I think we've seen every Enterprise referenced. And one more that was referenced in here as well, in a little gag about the Enterprise E, the one that was featured in the last Next Generation movie. The joke here that potentially, because we've never seen it happen, that Worf apparently is the cause of that crash, and Worf saying this isn't his fault. So we've never actually seen what happened to the Enterprise E, but we know it doesn't exist in the world anymore, and as probably, I guess, irreparable, right? Because there was no call to bring that back and get that replaced. They went straight back to the Enterprise D. So good little joke there. But apparently it has been referenced in some novels and books and stuff like that. But but the Enterprise E has not been the end of the Enterprise E has not been seen anywhere. So.
Okay, yeah. Because as well, some of the other ships or starships that were there, we do have the USS Cochrane, Sulu as well, which I loved. Yes. Excellent. Yeah. And the other one I noticed was Galgamesh as well. We're all part of the fleet that were assembled there when you looked at it on the readout.
Yeah.
Which was great.
Yeah, and there's another one that I really liked as well, because I got my reference
Excellent.
that I've been looking for all season to Dr. Pulaski. There is a USS Pulaski mentioned in here, so they do reference the Doctor from The Next Generation here as well.
Excellent. And also, whilst we're speaking of ships, there was also the Excelsior as well with Captain Ben Bassett, that they managed to escape from and recapture their bridge. So all I could think of was that this was the geriatric crew aboard the Excelsior, sort of the retirement, USS retirement.
Right. Yeah.
And
They may have had less
so basically none of them actually assimilated, but no, they had captured back the ship and then were blown out of the water. The Queen decoupled this synchronization technology of the fleet. And then unfortunately, yes, Captain Ben Bassett was blown up with the rest of his elderly crew.
But honestly, I thought that was really effective, the way they did that. And I don't know whether that's because I know CGI is massive now, that they do everything and it looks amazing. But I genuinely remember playing video games that were just 3 dots. And when you tell a story with the 3 dots, they actually can be affecting. Here it was basically 5 dots on a computer screen, and seeing the laser bolts or the phaser bolts coming out and taking out the Excelsior, you realize what's happened here, that they're being executed in front of the rest of the fleet. It looked really good, and it did still, even though it's low tech, it still came across as quite affecting as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I say low tech. I'm sure that took quite a few weeks to do the entire screen of ships from Starfleet, but it looked fantastic. Really enjoyed seeing all the references and that moment worked really well.
Yeah, good stuff. I think that's us with our moments for episode 9. Are there any notes left?
I have one, and it's a discussion. Because I want to open it to the floor. Because I've seen, I have my own opinion, and I've also seen some scuttlebutt on the internet.
Stop looking at the internet, Chris.
I at some point I have to, but it's like, what did you guys think? We had some ideas we had our own theories of who could have been behind the door, who the big bad could have been. Mm-hmm. And I will preface this with a spoiler from my wrap up in my own kind of thoughts. Mm-hmm. This is still for me, is one of the best episodes of Star Trek to date, in terms of it is the Next Generation on steroids. It is great. So let me just say that it is fantastic. But how do we feel with the Borg being the big bad again? The man behind the gooiness that was working with the changelings.
Right. Not sure we have an answer to that particular person behind the gooiness talking to the changelings yet. I think we still have that to come next week. Not sure if that was the Borg Queen in disguise. That will be answered next week, I think. It may not be answered ever, and it could just be that it is the Borg. For me, I was kicking myself that I didn't pick it up. It makes total sense that the anomaly inside of Picard, which they've been referencing all season, wasn't Irromatic syndrome, was the residue effectively of Locutus and what happened to him as Borg. It makes total sense to me. It's more having 2 seasons in a row of this show, if you've watched the 3 seasons of the show, having 2 of them featuring the Borg as the big antagonist, and them doing a much better job in this 3rd season of incorporating them as the villain, is more it's more the thing I have a problem with. And I don't even have that big a problem. It doesn't really matter. They've done a great job here. So I'm really happy that it works as a story this season. So for me, not an issue with the Borg being the bad guys again this season.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the Borg being the bad guys at all. I mean, I'm a little... the only thing about it is because of the involvement of the changelings, and I was really enjoying that whole storyline. It's like we mentioned, it's like with Marvel's Secret Invasion. You bring this notion of a species that can change to any form. It really ups the ante as to who you can and can't trust, and it almost feels as though that's in this episode, that just got completely pulled back. Now, it might come into the final episode, absolutely. Not saying it won't, but I actually just felt a little bit that all that great stuff being done just got a little shortchanged because the Borg cube just came flying in from left field in its nebula, not nebula, to kind of steal the show. That did kind of, at the end of this episode, I just looked at Derek and said, well, where are the changelings? There's nothing there. There's nothing, even seeing their victory, effectively they've just gotten what they've want. And I guess that will be in the next episode, but it felt like that had been shortchanged. As I say, episode 10 may come along and that's not the case.
Exactly.
So it's just, I guess there's been those breadcrumbs of the Borg through this season. I'm a little disappointed in my theory that behind the red door, because it was so fiery, it was the Bajoran fire pits. So I thought that was I was like going, oh yeah, that'd be really good if I'm right there. But it's like, obviously, no, wrong again. So maybe there's a bit of that, possibly. I don't know. But it's just simply, I felt the changelings were missing from this episode. Let's put it that way. I think it was more that. And that felt a little odd. Yeah. Immediately after I'd seen it, for sure. Yeah. But I do love this episode.
I'm quite similar. Like, look, for me, it's... I suppose part of me was like, do you know what I wish? Because we've seen so many... we've seen Borg storylines.
Yeah.
We've seen the Borg storylines. We saw the Borg previously in the last season. We saw synthetics in season 1.
And they were pillaging the Borg cubes in season 1 as well.
Exactly. So we had that story. And I'm like, I understand the Borg are the big bad. They are the big bad.
Yeah.
But part of me also goes, you had the Cardassians, you had the other ones from Deep Space Nine, you had some of the bad guys from Voyager, it's a wealth of a universe of bad guys. And I'm like, or you come up with a new. So part of me was like, I also know that some of these writers are some of the best writers in the business. And I've seen what they could do. So I'm like, I'd love to see if they had got more opportunity to play in that sandbox, could they have, or was this always the plan?
Yeah.
Was this the 3-season arc? And they do bring Borgatti back in later, and she's the one that stops this at the end. And it was all part of the 3-season arc we've had, and it's all about the synthetic life being the biggest, and AI, and everything being the big bad. So I'm just like, I think I trust that they know where they're going with this final episode, and I'm happy with everything so far. It's just also part of me is like, interesting. You had a whole universe to play in. You had a whole set of all the different season bad guys, different people the different show bad guys. You chose the Borg again to be that big bad. And I'm like, cool. I'm not complaining. Just
no, exactly.
Why? Interesting.
Yeah. I'd say it's probably the greatest hits concept. You bring back all the cast. You got to bring back the biggest bad. It's odd though. Again, we got Q last season, and Q had a great storyline last season. It was great to have Q back there last season. But you would think if they were doing the show the way they did season 3, that Q would have worked really well with all of this cast meeting up with Q. In this season, that could have been the other option that they were going for. Because they used him last season, it wouldn't make sense to do that 2 seasons in a row, I suppose.
Yeah.
No, that's very true. Okay,
so I think that's it for notes. Excellent. Right, off we go. Chris, what did you think of Star Trek Picard, Episode 9, Vox?
So I kind of gave it away already. For me, this is some of the best Star Trek in years, in a single episode. It's you just said those words, Derek, the greatest hits.
Yeah.
It felt like a greatest hits album. Like all the best parts of Star Trek The Next Generation, all the best parts of some of the best episodes kind of pulled together, like the family aspect, everything just heightened to 11 in a way, and really just making you go, oh, this was cool. Yeah. Now, and this is the one where I actually wish they had have done an Amazon on it, where they did the last 2 episodes back to back.
Yeah.
So we could have gone, oh yeah, let's just kind of, I record it and then just dive in tonight. But unfortunately, they didn't. So yeah, no, absolutely loved it. I'm very much looking forward to the final hour of this and the final hour of The Next Generation of Picard.
Mm-hmm.
What about yourself, Derek? What do you think of this penultimate episode of Picard?
Yeah, absolutely loved this. And I think, we had some ideas of what we wanted to see in the penultimate episode. And my big thing that I wanted to see was, tell me about Jack. Tell me what his connection is here. Tell me what his purpose is. Tell me what the reason that we've been following the character is really for the last 9 episodes, other than him being Picard and Beverly's son, which is a story in itself. So I'm glad they've revealed this big connection. I'm glad they've had the big reveal of the Borg couldn't have done this without him. That's a big connecting thing that needed to happen in the episode. They delivered that, but they also delivered on getting the family back together to go off on their final mission. Reuniting the crew with the Enterprise D is fantastic. I love that. The sacrifice of Sean, the end to his arc of a storyline, I thought was fantastic in this episode. It worked really, really well for me. Him finally accepting who Seven is and giving her the con. Of course, if she wrests control back of the Borg control ship. But I think that all makes sense. That in itself, we didn't really speak about that, but that in itself, I really like the idea that she's staying aboard the ship as the new captain. Raffi's staying with her, which is another callback to their relationship. But it also is a great excuse to not put anybody that wasn't in the Next Generation cast aboard the Enterprise D, right? It works really well in loads of ways. So overall, writing has been really tight throughout the season, coming right up here now to the penultimate episode. It's written by fans that have loads of knowledge about the show, but it's not just fan service. They're also telling great stories with the cast that they have here. Spectacular. Loved it overall. How about yourself, John? What's your final thoughts on Star Trek Picard season 3, episode 9?
Yeah, I really loved this episode. I'd give this 5 wrinkled leather hides out of 5. I was going to go with sleek starships out of 5, but I think both work. Sleek and wrinkly, sort of yin and yang going on there.
I've seen this many wrinkles.
Absolutely. Well, I won't tell you what my other one was going to be, but certainly I just love this episode from start to finish. It sort of really maintained that sort of uneasy relationship between Picard and Jack, certainly where he has to effectively put him under house arrest, effectively. Jack's sort of cockiness that he will be able to go to the Borg Queen, and seeing how really, that doesn't go quite according to plan. I loved ultimately, just the whole exposition of what we've seen, sort of connecting the dots, from that trail of breadcrumbs, I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It felt suitably Star Trek. It was delivered in a really Star Trek way, which I loved. Tons of Easter eggs in this, whether it's from Admiral Shelby to the USS Cochrane or Sulu to the NX-01, and of course the cherry on top, which is just delighting in the Enterprise D. Really, really enjoyed that a lot. I can't wait to see the next episode and how they battle against the odds in the Enterprise D with limited weaponry, as Worf says. He prefers the phaser array on the Enterprise E.
Shut up, Worf.
Yes.
Just tell them how much you like the ship.
That, just how they will pull that one out of the fire. But that's to me what the Next Generation is about. Absolutely. The team together, using all their skills, beating and going against the odds. So, this was 5 wrinkled leather hides out of 5.
Great stuff.
What was your revelation there, Chris?
Oh my god, Borgatti. That's how you fight all the Borg, the Borg controlled. She has her own collective. You can bring them in, or it's just going to be they have to go to the Borg. Picard has to pull and then has an emotional chat down with Jack, and he then takes over and goes against the Borg using the Borg technology.
Or someone has to die, or a number of people have to die. Can you imagine?
Absolutely great stuff, John. Really, really good episode. Totally loved it. Just to say, definitely check out Twitter at the moment on Terry Matalas's feed. They're starting to share, because they didn't want to spoil anything before the episode came out, but they're starting to share some of the details behind the creation of the ships. If you guys don't know, if you haven't been following that stuff, most of the fans who were speculating about what's happening this season thought that the crew were going to be getting aboard their brand new Enterprise, the Enterprise F. So images of that had been released, so seeing that effectively taken over and not being having the Next Generation crew aboard it was a big shock to a lot of people. I don't think anybody expected the Enterprise D was going to be coming back, and the attention to detail and the recreation of the Enterprise D is magnificent. I'm sure most people know this, but that's not, of course, the original set that was destroyed back in the 90s after the show finished production. So the replica that they've done here is down to the carpet itself, of course. So it's literally every single element that's in there on screen is to perfection. So fantastic job by the production crew on here.
You what? They destroyed it.
It is, sadly. Yeah. I think we all need to go and get a Ractigino or a Romulan ale.
Or a bit of sour Chateau Picard.
Perhaps some sour Chateau Picard.
Wine.
Time to head over to our pub quiz. But we should mention, in case you missed it last week, we gave a pretty impossible question for our question 8 in our Star Trek Picard pub quiz. Because when we finally saw the episode, we realized we couldn't actually read the answer to the question that we thought we could read previously. So we have replaced that question.
Yes.
We did put out a specific episode giving the brand new question.
And it's up on the website now.
It is with the brand new questions up there. But I do want to give a shout out to Victor Von Doom, who sent us an email as he had found the answer in the episode to our impossible question. So it is possible, but way too hard, because we couldn't see it when we were pausing the episode on the streaming on Paramount Plus or on Prime Video. We have both options available to us and couldn't see the answer, but Victor has found it. He did get it. Well done, Victor. Nobody else, you're not going to be held to answer that question. There is a new question 8.
Yes, absolutely. Well done, Victor. I think I would need to go back to my opticians very quickly if I was to try and spot that code.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I'm certain that we saw it, though. I'm certain that we were able to see it the first time we watched it, and then trying to pause the screen to find it again when it was on streaming was impossible. So we won't leave you with that question. John, I'm going to just ask you to call out question 8 one more time. So the correct question 8 now, this is the one that you have to add to your answers for the podcast.
Yes, fellow quizzers, fellow Trekkies, welcome back. Hope you haven't drank too much so that you can follow what is going on. But, as Derek said, a repeat of question 8. What new Betazoid word does Deanna Troi teach Will Riker when they are imprisoned on the Shrike?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And a brand new question for this episode. Question 9.
Question 9. What is the name of the research academy on Vulcan where Jean Luc tries to send Jack to?
Excellent. It might be a research facility. May not, but that's what Picard calls it anyway. So John, give the question one more time.
Question 9. What is the name of the research academy on Vulcan where Jean Luc tries to send Jack to?
Great stuff. 9th question of 10. Gather together the answer to all 10 questions and email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com at the end of the season, and you could get your hands on some Star Trek Picard goodies.
Excellent stuff. Right, let us move on to feedback for this episode. First off, some general feedback on the season from our feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. We have Frank Amir. Frank Amir says, "Hi, Derek, John, and Chris. First of all,
Hi.
I truly enjoy the podcast and the authentic excitement you all have on the Picard series. I do not have anyone to fawn over the series with, so listening to you makes my viewpoints feel authentic and provokes further insight into the show's storyline. I wanted to write to you today to speak about the opening title card and closing credits. The only title card we see is the name of the episode and the name which is currently part 1, 2, etc. Simple and direct. The closing credits is what I find so engaging, which is typically not the norm. They highlight the ship's sensors and controls using very close focus shots. The colours and graphics provide simple and clean details. They are typically in the background, but we know they have a team of people who have developed these graphics. It's nice to see them take center stage for once. I will attempt to list the ones I have identified. A DNA strand diagram, a holodeck program, language translation, music, layout of the ship, Space Fleet Museum, Starfleet Officer Performance Evaluation, the quote, "Do not seek blame, do not seek anger," a micro neurographic scan. You can almost see in which episodes these came into play over the course of the season. Thanks again for this podcast where I can fandom over Star Trek with you guys. Frank Amir. Thank you so much, Frank Amir. Really great to get your feedback in. And you're so right. I mean, certainly those graphics are on the end credits. After this episode, you can see the Borg DNA alteration to that DNA strand diagram that you mentioned as one of those graphics you've identified. So yeah, really intricate stuff connected to different episodes in different ways. So yeah, really good.
Yeah, nice little nods as you can see them going back to things that have happened in previous episodes. So yeah, very cool. They've definitely spent a lot of time in those credits.
And of course, really glad you're subscribed and listening to the podcast and that you can fandom out with us over Star Trek Picard. Great stuff.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for, to have everybody fandom out with us about Star Trek. So glad you found us. Thanks so much, Frank and Mate.
Thanks so much, Frank and Mate.
We also got a message through our website from Brandon. Brandon, thanks for sending a message through the website. I didn't know we had that functionality set up, so it's awesome.
You scared him.
It's cool. I was like, wow, we got somebody that sent a message through there, and it came directly through to my email. So brilliant stuff. Thanks, Brandon. Brandon says, I've been listening to your podcast for Picard season 3 since the first episode, and I have to say you all do an excellent job each week. I have been wanting to reach out, and since we are at the 9th episode, now is as good a time as any. This episode certainly answered a lot of questions, but if I'm being honest, I was a little disappointed to see the Borg behind that red door as the big bad, overarching entity. I really wanted to see it be something different, like the Pa Wraiths, especially since the changelings were involved. I was hoping we'd get to see Captain Sisko, aka the emissary, but I guess that is just wishful thinking. I thought with the end of season 2 we concluded the story with the Borg, but I guess not. I almost wonder if the creators are trying to retcon season 2 due to the poor reception it received by a lot of fans. With all of that said, I have to remember that this is Picard's story, and it makes absolute sense that the Borg would play a major role in the conclusion of his story, since they are the one foe he never truly defeated. Overall, I thought episode 9 was a good story, but I was sad to see Captain Shaw killed off. At least that's what it looks like for now. I really disliked him at the beginning of the season, but he grew on me as the season went on, and I would have liked him to stick around for some more. It was touching at the end when he finally acknowledged Commander Hansen as 7 of 9, and gave her command of the ship, even though it was already under the command of the Borg. Still, it's the sentiment that counts. Obviously, the best for last is the reveal of the Enterprise D. I think this is a reveal we have been waiting for all season.
Oh, yeah.
I chuckled a little when Geordi revealed the Enterprise D and then said, and obviously we can't use Enterprise E, and everyone then simultaneously looked at Worf and he responded, that was not my fault. It seems Worf may have crashed the Enterprise E at some point in the past. Seems par for the course for an Enterprise ship if you think about it. Picard's line about missing the carpets was also a good one. I could literally go on and on about this episode. It was just so good, and I cannot wait for episode 10. This is one of the best seasons of any Star Trek by far.
Excellent stuff, Brandon. I completely agree. I think this has been really
so good.
Just such a great way of folding in the nostalgia around The Next Generation with the cast from the original series. Little snippets to other parts of the galaxy like Voyager and Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
just seeing Enterprise D, getting a glimpse of a new Enterprise in Enterprise F as well.
Yeah.
So I love how they've really, folded that nostalgia into a really good storyline that introduces Jack Crusher, introduces Captain Shaw, and so many other things, and weaves in the changelings, into, I guess, the next generation much more heavily. To me, they were always the Deep Space Nine, foes effectively. So I like that kind of crossover as well. So yeah, I think it's been a fantastic season of Star Trek.
I agree as well. Like, for me, it's still some of the best we've ever seen. I'm with you in that, Shaw, we all kind of disliked him now. Todd Stashwick is a whole other matter.
Absolutely.
That actor is just fantastic as a character actor across, but you're built to dislike him, and by now have some shock emotion feel that he is gone, which is a shame. We don't want that. And then, I'm kind of with you on, we already discussed just on the Borg bit, and I like the Path Wraiths. I saw more and more about the Path Wraith stuff, from Deep Space Nine over the last week in particular. Just before this episode aired, everyone was zeroing in on that. Going, it would be great, and that'll kind of get you back into those kind of the other big kind of good and bad guys from beyond the wormhole. And I think that would have been cool. Maybe they'll explore it in a different season or a show. Maybe that's Discovery's next big thing. But we'll wait and see. Yeah,
or maybe we'll see something next week's episode. You never know. Just on the point of the retcon of season 2, I just want to mention this. The whole show itself, Star Trek Picard, came from bringing Patrick Stewart back on board to the idea of doing Star Trek again. I remember being at the premiere for the first episode of Picard season 1, and there was lots of discussions about Patrick Stewart saying he did not want to come back as Jean Luc Picard, still sitting on the Enterprise 30 years on from the previous adventure. He didn't want to tell that story. And I feel like now that they've gotten 2 seasons of stories which are really focused on Picard and him as a person in later in life, that's allowed them to do this 3rd season, which is much more about bringing that cast of the Next Generation back together. It was filmed, as far as I remember, it was filmed very close to the 2nd season of the show. They almost did it back to back.
Exactly.
So I don't think they'd actually seen the reaction of audiences to the end of season 2 to plan this story out. For season 3, I think this was the plan. And, obviously things get worked in filming and things get worked through in the writer's room, as they continue. But I don't think they're trying to retcon what happened at the end of season 2. In fact, as I said, there was a call out to, that these are 2 different Borgs. They're 2 different stories, effectively, that can still exist simultaneously in this galaxy, I guess, in this universe of Star Trek. So I don't think they're specifically retconning. I think it's just a natural progression. And now this series is much more about telling a story of the Enterprise crew years on, whereas the first 2 seasons were about Picard's, experience later in life. But great stuff. Yep. Thanks so much, Brandon, for your thoughts. And thanks for using our form on the website to send in your comment. It's great to know it works.
Good stuff. Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks, Brandon. Over on Facebook, on last week's episode, Donald Dennis had this to say. So, how certain are we that Deanna Troi isn't a changeling? Chris saying this, pretty certain now, but that's besides the point. Back to Donald. Either way, I like to see her and Riker scenes. They had more character development in that cell than they had in the entire seasons of The Next Generation. I loved the theory Chris presented about the Black Ooze. This whole series seems like it's redeeming characters and events from previous lore, and I think it's doing a great job of that. Reconciling with Denise Cosby's Yars somehow could be a fan service of the best kind. The data lore scene was pretty much as I suspected it would turn out. I hope that some of lore becomes a bit more evident. Not the homicidal maniac, but some turns where you go, that's new. Maybe bluffing better in poker. Thanks, Donald. Yeah, look, it would have been Black Ooze, would have been cool. Ooze is always cool, i.e. Ghostbusters 2. I'm not taking any comments on it.
That's all right.
That's my thought. But do agree, look, that Riker and Diana Troy scene was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
We called it at the end of our episode last as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Donald. I think, I'm hoping Diana isn't a changeling, to be honest.
Yeah.
Or, yes.
Pretty sure she's not. Again,
No. Yes.
the mind reading abilities probably still say she's better at that.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. Good stuff. Dr. Bob had a quick comment, just said, quick lobes of the brain refresher. Frontal is the decision-making planning. Parietal are the stolen bits of Picard. They're about memory and language. And occipital is sight and scent and taste. Because I think we might have mixed them up on last week's
well, I
podcast.
know I did. Even in this podcast, I was saying frontal. Because I don't remember the other two.
So, parietal are the stolen bits. Frontal is the decision-making planning. They're the ones that develop and stop developing at 25, I think.
Couldn't they have done frontal, lateral, and reversal?
Maybe.
Oh no, it's all my backle. It's all the back of my brain.
Exactly. The backal lobe.
My frontal lobe and my backle lobe. My sidal lobe, my other sidal lobe.
My lefty lobe and my righty lobe.
I know technically Jean is the only doctor on our podcast, but not a doctor of medicine.
No, I am not a medicine doctor, which you'll all be very pleased to know.
Yes, we should be. If he comes in and goes, well, you've got an owie wowie on your boopy, but don't worry, it's really going to just affect your backy wacky lobe, not your fronty wunty lobe, so you're all right.
Yeah, any doctor that says that, don't let them treat you.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dr. Bob. On this week's episode, we got an email in from Virat who says, I must say this show has made me love Reddit all over again and simultaneously despise it all over again.
Reddit, yes.
Right after watching the episode twice, as it might have been my favourite Star Trek episode of all time. I made the mistake and read the post-show comments and was surprised at some of the negativity. One comment caught my eye in that he commented how they didn't even mention Jurati Borg Queen once the entire episode. This got me thinking. This was a brand new, out of nowhere reveal. Nobody had the Borg on their minds until the red door opened. They are in the midst of being checkmated by the Borg, with Earth on the brink of destruction. It would be like a supermodel perfection who got to be beautiful through hard work and exercise, Jurati Borg, and pitting them against a supermodel who got liposuction. If they were to conceive getting help from Jurati Borg, it's just hard to see a Borg on Borg conflict based on the means to perfection. I think a throwdown debate on who is more perfect might happen, not a conflict. To me, it would make more sense if Jurati Queen had a showdown with non-Jurati Queen for Jack, since Jack expressed some of the lack of connection and aloneness as Jurati. All in all, I don't see how they get out of this one without obliterating the temporal prime directive. Love the show, Virat.
That's a really interesting idea, Virat. I like the idea that it could be Jurati going up against the Borg Queen, to save Jack effectively because they had similar sentiments to them. That's a really interesting way of bringing it in. And I think you're right. Yeah. The idea that they wouldn't mention Jurati, it wouldn't be the first thing that would pop into Picard's mouth when the entire fleet was being taken over by the Borg. I kind of get that. There's loads of other stuff going on here, but I think probably like myself, we were just trying to remember, how the Borg storyline finished last season and how it would connect to this season. So, I can see why there may have been a little confusion in there as well, of course. But I like your idea.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks for that.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Over on Facebook for this week's episode, we got some feedback from Joe Herbers, who had this to say. So much fan service, so little ever spent on a sensible story. Love seeing the old crew together, but felt like such a wasted opportunity to do something more interesting. Really wishing Jack hadn't taken up so much of this season. Did they actually need Jack for the Frontier Day takeover? If so, then Troy should have left the damn door closed. Are we going to explain who's controlling Vadic, likely the Borg Queen in disguise, and what threat the Borg apparently made against the Changeling to get them to take over Starfleet? Thanks, Joe. Yeah, my assumption is next week. Like, we'll get all the Borg stuff, as myself and Derek and John have already discussed in next week's episode. We'll get that with more changelings. Yeah. The Frontier Day, I don't think they needed Jack for the Frontier Day. They needed Jack to basically turn on the control of all the Borg under the 25. He's the transmitter. So to take over all the young people, they needed him for that.
Yeah.
The swarm of the actual ships was just code.
Yeah.
So they didn't need him for that. They needed him for the turning on of the Borg code within people.
Effectively, he connects with them through space, because I think you see his eyes go black, as I say, the demon kind of look, and you see on Mura and on Sydney and those that turn, their eyes go black, effectively, and then back as though there you have it. It's I guess, instead of going red like they did when he wasn't plugged in and assimilated by the Borg Queen.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So he was essential to the plan. If he hadn't been there, this wouldn't have happened.
Yes.
Yeah. But as for a threat to the changelings to get them involved in the takeover, I don't think there was any threat. I think it was more of a promise. I think they were working together to get payback on Starfleet for the changelings because of what they had been done to them. I don't think there's a threat there from the Borg. Just interesting that they didn't assimilate them, which seems to happen when the Borg come in contact with anybody, right? So, but they obviously found there was a way of using them. So interesting stuff. Thanks so much for that, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
Victor Von Doom also sent in his thoughts. He said, I was a bit disappointed at the Borg resurgence, but it was only fitting that they return alongside all the crew. Sorry to see Shaw go. He gave nice props to Seven, though. Geordie's legendary reputation is reconfirmed when he produced the Enterprise D. I hope Raffi and Seven can save his daughters along with the rest of the Titans crew. I'm very eager to see how this concludes.
Thanks, Victor. Cannot wait for episode 10, and certainly to see how they can pull this one from the jaws of defeat, I guess, to be honest, because it's pretty total warfare from the Borg. And like yourself, and as we've discussed, I think the Borg resurgence, it just felt quite a surprise on this episode, even though I guess there are breadcrumbs throughout, for sure. Yeah. And certainly with reference to it, as Captain Shaw's little speech in the holodeck. So, but I think, I'm never going to say no to seeing the Borg. They are such a great antagonistic foe, Yeah. So, thanks so much, Victor.
Do you know there's only one thing that annoyed me about them in the episode?
What?
Do you know when they went through the red door and we heard "We are Borg"?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then later on, when LaForge's daughter turns, the first thing she says is "We are the Borg." It just annoyed me. I don't know. I've always kind of wondered, is it "We are Borg" or "We are the Borg"? And both were used in the episode. Anyway, only thing that annoyed me. But thanks so much for that, Victor. Corey Garron says, Shelby, no. I do kind of hate when they bring back characters just to kill them off, especially immediately killing them. Makes me kind of glad that we didn't see Janeway return.
Well, yeah, that is true. Yeah. But where is Admiral Janeway? Because technically, I guess she was overseeing all this. You'd expect her to be there. So I do wonder if maybe why she wasn't around, that actually she's not a changeling, and that she's gone back to her old haunting ground of the Delta Quadrant, where she's been able to find, ultimately some kind of anti-Borg thingy-majig that they can whip out.
Maybe.
You never know.
Or she's starting the resistance from Earth.
It lives on.
You never know. Good stuff. Some other mentions about Borgatti as well. Angiarhos says, I had the same question. Are they just ditching all of season 2's storyline? I will say I almost didn't watch this season, but it's actually far better than the other two. More like an old school Next Generation episode. I was extremely sorry they killed off Captain Shaw, though. He was a great, irreverent character, and I would have loved for him to be on another show.
Excellent stuff. Thanks, Angie. Yep. Totally with you there. But I think, season 2's storyline is definitely still there. So hopefully, it's not too much of a problem there, you know?
Exactly. Richard Blaze also says, same. I was going, wait, what? Didn't this sort itself out in season 2? Sandy Resindi said, right, I'm so confused. So hopefully by the end of the podcast here, you guys will have a little bit more clarity. And by the end of the season, everybody will understand exactly what's happened here at the board.
Totally understandable. Had exactly the same kind of feeling. And certainly because they kept the face hidden, I was just like, okay. But then it wasn't that kind of crucifix-like Borg ship that Borgatti had as well. So,
Exactly. And guys, look, hopefully everyone got that. And if you don't, and we are still wrong and everyone's still confused, and turns out it was all sorted and this is something completely different, time-space continuums, timey-wiminess, it's not our fault. We were all wrong. Don't hold it against us. The final piece of feedback we got was from the Twitter musical maestro Matt Murdoch, who had this to say. That episode of Picard was a whole lot of people figuring out the exact right answers all at once, which seemingly highly unlikely and was an absolute assault on the brain to keep up with. But I guess was done in the interest of keeping suspense for 9 episodes. Nonetheless, the revisit of Enterprise D was very emotional for me. So much so that I had to pause the episode for a few seconds to regather myself, and was worth the price of admission alone. Thanks, Matt. And yeah, I think everyone of a certain age who grew up with, and or those who kind of have a deep connection to Star Trek, kind of felt the exact same way. And what is Star Trek not, if not a whole load of people figuring out the exact same thing and all the right answers at the exact same time, especially within 40 minutes. Yeah,
absolutely, Chris. Always happened in 40 minutes of an episode on air of The Next Generation that we had everything solved.
Absolutely,
the whole team putting their spokes together, putting their heads together, and completing the puzzle. So great to see that in this episode. But yes, slightly unbelievable it would all happen within a minute of each other.
It was hilarious.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. And thank you, fellow Trekkies, for all your feedback. Keep it coming in for the final episode.
Absolutely, but a very good point. We're not going to have a feedback section for the final episode, because hopefully we'll be recording it before we go away on holidays. So we will be coming back afterwards to talk about the feedback for the final episode, the feedback on the entire season, and of course, revealing our winner of our pub quiz.
Yes. So keep the answers coming in through feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com as well. But thank you so much, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers, for joining us today. Thanks for all the feedback as well. We hope you stay subscribed to the podcast. And if you enjoy what you hear, why not share it with your friends? Because, of course, sharing the podcast is, of course, sharing the assimilation.
Love.
Oh my God.
Because, of course, sharing the podcast is, of course, sharing the
assimilation. I thought that was quite good. I was going to leave it in.
That was quite good as well.
I was going to leave it in. Why wouldn't I take it out?
Yeah.
Was it good?
Yeah.
Resistance is futile, fellow Trekkies. And of course, we will be back next week with the finale of Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 10, The Last Octogenarian.
That's not right.
The Last Generation.
That's right.
So your feedback on the show, as Derek has mentioned, really important, but please get that in. And of course, we'll have the next question of our 10 Forward pub quiz. So please make sure you join us for the finale.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we've gone from the first generation to the next generation to the last generation in the finale of Picard next week. Can't wait.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, maybe they'll go to the octogenarian.
They might. Thanks so much for joining us. Talk to you again next time.
Thanks, folks. Speak to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers, for joining us. As always, make sure you watch the next episode. And in the meantime, before we're back, keep watching, keep listening, and of course, keep assimilating.
Bye.
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 Don't assimilate. We do not support assimilation in this podcast.
No.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.